Hi, this is Eric from longboxreview.com. Welcome to the show. Today I have 3 trades that I want to talk about. The first one is Bad Luck Chuck from Dark Horse. The next one will be Hex Wives from Vertigo, the former Vertigo. And then finally from Image Comics, Shanghai Red. So all of these feature female protagonists, and so that was just kind of a happenstance when I decided to talk about these books. They were just books that I read that I happened to have some thoughts about, not necessarily always positive thoughts, but I'll get into that a little bit. But I wanted to just go over these, just to give some quick thoughts. Nothing too extensive, but take my thoughts with a grain of salt, as it were, and you can decide for yourself if these are good comic books or not. And so to start off with, Bad Luck Chuck. So I'll read I like to read the back of the book blurbs here. So here we go. Cursed at birth, Charlene Chuck Manchester hires out her own bad luck, providing disaster where someone else can profit. She can get you that insurance payout fortune for a price, but bad luck doesn't always go as planned, and when Chuck gets stuck between a dissatisfied crime boss client, a cult leader, and a dogged insurance fraud investigator, things get explosive. Everything that could go wrong does, and only about half of it by accident. And so Bad Luck Chuck is by Leela Gwen, Matthew Dow Smith, Kelly Fitzpatrick, and Frank Chetkovich. So, I'm kind of putting these books in order of preference, with ending with my favorite of the 3. So Bad Luck Chuck is first, and that's just kind of bad luck for Chuck here in this case. But I really wanted to like this book. The idea of this person, Chuck, who has this extreme bad luck. And just kind of the twist on the whole kind of private eye noir. I mean, because that's someone makes a reference to this being a noir thriller at some point. I think that has more to do with the marketing than anything else. Although I will say the Smith and Fitzpatrick art really lends itself to, or toward kind of a noir, private eye type feel in this comic book. So I really like that aspect of it. But man, you take this idea, the kind of like the elevator pitch idea of this, add in this interesting character who is literally, she's plagued by bad luck, and then you throw her into these incidents, or her interactions with certain characters, and it starts to become a bit farcical. And what I cannot decide is if this is intentional. I can only assume that it is, but the way I have a hard time expressing this, because I just can't decide what this comic is trying to be. It's very schizophrenic to me. On one hand, it's trying to be this genre bender, like I said, kind of a noirish sort of private eye-like story with some twists, and then it's got these elements where it has these over the top cartoonish antagonists in the form, especially in the form of it says cult leader, but he's more of a tent revivalist preacher type character who somehow either has already, or during the course of the interaction with the police, sways certain members of the police to join him in his quest to destroy the evil that is Chuck. I don't know. It's like I said, it's very schizophrenic. Or maybe that's being too generous. Maybe it's just underbaked. Just kind of the whole concept. It's too bad because, like I said, Chuck is a very interesting character, especially when there's a scene in which she takes her client, and this is the basic plot of the book, is that this young woman whose mother is, I guess, some sort of crime boss. I mean that's what they said in on the blurb, but even she doesn't come across as all that, I don't know, menacing. On the surface, she seems to be the mother, but I don't know. But from there, then all this other stuff happens. And anyway, so Chuck takes her client back to her office, and you see all of these wards, and there's a point where the client starts messing with the stuff in Chuck's office and starts to put one of the wards from one spot to another, and Chuck lunges across the room at her, yelling, "No, we don't put 10+3 of anything on any surface in this house." So she can't even say the word 13. And there's another, I think, a spot earlier to that where Chuck is in her home office or whatever, and she makes a comment about how she needs time. She says, "I've been out for too long already. I need to stay where it's safe for a while." So all those wards actually help keep the bad luck away from her, because if she's, as we find out later, if she's away from her sanctuary for too long, bad things happen to other people. And so just that idea right there, that character, her situation, that is exactly the kind of comic book I wanted to read. And I get a little bit of that, but then I get the over the top villains. I mean, the preacher guy is one note the entire time through. He's constantly preaching, and the way that the letterer Chetkovich lettered this guy's word balloons is that, you know, he's constantly yelling with, so the letterer has put all, you know, just about every other word in huge letters, and so he constantly talks like that, and I'm, you know, yeah, for a gag, I guess that's okay, but it doesn't work as a constant. So, and then you've got the crime boss. She kind of looks like Angela Bassett, I have to say. So maybe that was the model for Smith in this. But you know, just she has. If she's a crime boss, then you would expect her to be a little more careful in her dealings. Granted, maybe her dealings with Chuck causes or forces her to take more risks because she's getting overly emotional, perhaps, but I think I'm extrapolating there instead of taking from the text what or to demonstrate that is the case. But she just expects everyone to do her bidding, and for people to be in fear of her, and that includes the police, which gets her in some hot water later. Later in the series, near towards the end, we find out just a little bit more about Chuck's background, and we get introduced to this. I think it's like a Buddhist monk, this group of female Buddhist monks, which I found, again, very interesting. So everything about Chuck in particular, I found very interesting. But then there's the resolution to the plot and her situation with the two main antagonists. They talk about the insurance fraud investigator, but he's kind of a minor player in the whole thing. Really, you know, he does join forces briefly with the other, the mother, the crime boss mother. But you know, there's a turn of events at the end of the comic, and then. Sorry, I'm probably gonna have to spoil a little bit of this. They get arrested, and the comic ends. I kid you not, the comic ends with them escaping and going off. Chuck, the daughter, her former client, one of the Buddhist monks and the insurance fraud guy joined forces to help others using Chuck's abilities and their own skills. But the last 2 pages of the book end in this way, and this is partly why I have a problem with this book, and what kind of story it's trying to tell. So I'll just read some of the captions here. 1 month ago, a nun, an heiress, an investigator, and a supremely unlucky woman were sent to prison for a crime they didn't commit. They promptly escaped from a maximum security stockade to the Los Angeles underground. Today, still wanted by the government, they survive as soldiers of fortune. Can you guess where I'm going with this? If you have a problem, and if no one else can help, and if you can find them, maybe you can hire ... That is how the book ends. I love comic books, and I treat them with respect. And as I have raised my daughters as they read, as they got older and they started reading comics, I explained to them the importance of how to hold a comic properly, not to fold it, definitely don't put dog ears on the pages, things like that. Make sure your hands are clean, all that good stuff. Right? I'm not obsessive. I almost threw this book across the room when I read that those final 2 pages, because I was going to say, what a waste. It wasn't a waste, but it certainly wasn't a satisfying read. Maybe this was, the first of what could have been additional miniseries, or even, if maybe they wanted to possibly turn this into an ongoing. I don't know. But that ending suggested to me that it's like, oh, well, we gotta end this book, so I'm just gonna do this funny little thing. It didn't work for me, unfortunately, from this creative team. So I liked certain aspects, certain elements of this book, but as a whole, it did not gel. And maybe I'm just missing the mark. Maybe I'm not understanding the humor here. But like I said, this book seemed to be of 2 minds, and my mind was made up about it, I guess, and not in the positive sense. So, but your mileage may vary. I certainly like the art better overall than the ideas in it. So, maybe you can get something out of that. But, go read it for yourself and decide. Next up is Hex Wives. This is by Ben Blacker, Mirka Andolfo, Marissa Louise, and Josh Reed. So, what is this book about? The war went on for centuries. On one side, a coven of perpetually reincarnating witches dedicated to cultivating their otherworldly abilities and guarding their independence. On the other, an all-male conspiracy of witch hunters known as the Architects, determined to put an end to the power of their nigh-mortal adversaries for good. Neither could land a decisive blow, and the result was stalemate. Until 2005, when everything changed. Now, Coven leader Isadora is a happy wife with a happy life in a cozy, quiet cul-de-sac in the town of Desert Canyon. She has no recollection of her many past lives, no memory of her membership in an ancient order of necromancers, no reminders of the endless war it waged, and no idea of the power that she and the other housewives of Desert Canyon possess. But you can't keep a good witch down, and these ladies are the best. Once they find out the truth about their white picket prison, the men that they thought they knew are going to have hell to pay. And then they also say something about this. This book collects all 6 issues of the acclaimed DC Vertigo miniseries. I don't know about the acclaimed part. Again, kind of like maybe with Bad Luck Chuck, this was intended to be, or could have turned into an ongoing series, or maybe a series of miniseries. I believe that all we got were these 6 issues, and therein I have a problem with this. I will say the first time I read this, I did not like it. I was really bothered by it. we get early on in the book that there's this centuries old fight between this coven of witches and this group of men. You know, let the metaphor be quite obvious here for what's still going on today between, or the evils perpetrated by men on women. And then the book quickly gets into their prison. Trying to decide how much I should reveal about this. But, I guess there's some things I want to say about it. So I'm going to reveal some plot points. But the majority of the book is these witches in their domesticated prison. And I guess I wanted more of a catharsis in the story, because while they are murdering and supposedly satanic, their origins are satanic, I identified with those characters and not the other side. So I wanted them to have, basically I wanted them to break out of the prison and wanted the story to go from there. But unfortunately, the majority of the story is them in their prison. And so you get a little bit of them as witches in earlier times, and then the majority of the book, like I said, is their prison, and then we get a little bit at the end with them having freed themselves. So I didn't like that. I also didn't like the subjugation of these women in the story. I remember an interview that I read with Ben Blacker about the uncomfortableness I think he felt at writing a story about women, and in particular this story. But I think he was assuaged by other people that knew the story and whatnot. So, but I had a problem with it in general. So, but on reread, while these characters, these women their personalities are different from before when they were witches and now when they are the Hex Wives. Pardon that. But we do get to know them in their current incarnation, and they're interesting characters, especially when they, and this is very purposeful, given that they previously were a coven of witches. When they get together and they're talking with each other, when the guys show up, as they often do, it's not as interesting. So I guess I wanted more of that. I wanted more of them throughout the book. Well, I guess no. What I want is more of them as their true selves. So again, I'm going back to my original complaint about this book. But I guess the point is that I didn't mind it as much reading through it the second time to prepare for this episode. So I guess that's the basics of the ideas in here. And Blacker and Company also do a fairly decent job of showing that that the guys aren't all that bad. I guess I don't know. I guess maybe I wanted them to be less sympathetic, just because of what they're doing to the women. But I don't know. So I guess what I'm uncomfortable with this book, and I think maybe that is the point. I'm supposed to be uncomfortable with it. Maybe I'm not sure. Again, I'm not entirely sure what the intent here is. Kind of like the plot point of this, the architects subjugating the women in the way that they do. So the reference to 2005 is what was it? The hurricane that went through New Orleans. And that's just the backdrop of the last major conflict between this cabal of men and the coven. And one of the characters there, he was the son of one of the men that was murdered by Isadora. He has come up with this plan to use magic to basically stop the stalemate and contain the women. And so here it is 3 years later, and that's where we get like I keep using that word, the domestication of the coven. However, there's a point at the end where the coven is awakened, and she wants an explanation. Why did they do what they did? So, what is his name? Aaron. So basically, Aaron has cast a spell, and he and a bunch of other guys are their husbands, the coven's husbands, and they keep an eye on them and stuff. So he says, you, referring to the 2005 incident, you birthed a catastrophe that left 2,000 dead and a city clawing from its grave. The others wanted to kill you. I came up with this to save you. And Isadora says, kidnapping and brainwashing 7 women was your response instead of having an effing conversation? Tell me why I shouldn't kill you for that. Because you're not just 7, there are hundreds of you, and I can help you free the others. So that to me suggests that they intended for this series to go on. And it simply hasn't. But the idea that, I don't know, I still don't understand why Aaron and the others went along with this, or came up with this and went along with it, because they've been at war with this coven for centuries. They found a way to subjugate the women. They could have easily just killed them. I don't understand why they didn't, unless they wanted to harness their powers. But that they were, throughout the book, they went to great pains to prevent the women from accidentally using their powers, because there were a few times throughout the story where something magical would happen, and the men would rush in to prevent that from going any further. So I don't know. I'm confused. I don't understand, and that just makes it that's a huge negative in my book. If I don't understand the why of something, if it doesn't make sense to me, then I tend to discount the whole thing. What I won't discount, though, is the Adolfo Luis art, because they do a fantastic job of not just page layout or panel layout on the pages, but the colors. When magic is around, the colors change in the panels and on the pages. Everything else is very bright and airy, and dare I say, 1950. It has a 1950s American television look to it. But yeah, the stuff with the magic just is really, really cool in terms of the coloring. And interestingly, except for a few times, the use of splash pages are reserved for the very last page of every issue. So I thought that was a nice change of events. And where they do use splash pages elsewhere, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. And there's also this recurring motif of Isadora getting ready, and it's a 9-panel grid. And so you see that near the beginning of the series, and you see it throughout the series. And some elements of that change as the story goes on. So I thought that was kind of neat. Yeah, a little better, more cohesive story, even if I have some issues with with kind of the reasoning for this particular plot, but still a little bit better in my mind than the previous book. And then we come to my favorite, Shanghai Red. This is by Christopher Sabella, Joshua Hickson, and Hassan Atsmanelhau. And Roman Stevens did some color flatting. This book is about, they took her life from her. She's come back to return the favor. Red is one of the hundreds of unlucky souls shanghaied in the late 1800s. Drugged, kidnapped, and sold to a ship's captain for hard labor, Red awakens on a vessel headed out to sea for years, unable to escape or even reveal who she truly is. Now Red's coming home in a boat covered in blood, in search of the family and life that were stolen out from beneath her, and to track down the men responsible in a tale of revenge, family, and identity that stretches from the deck of a ship outside Shanghai to the bleak streets of Portland, Oregon, and the secret tunnels stretched out underneath it. Boy, this was a delight, this book, Shanghai Red. For some reason, I think I have this thing about pirates that I didn't realize, because I got this book mostly for the tale of revenge and the fact that the protagonist was a woman. And then there's this other book that I recently, at the time of this recording, I recently pre-ordered that has to do with a female pirate. So I don't know. Maybe it's just a thing I have about pirates. But wow, just where the other two books have their issues, this one feels like, how can I, what's a good analogy here? So the other two books are kind of like, so Bad Luck Chuck is kind of like a Twinkie in that there's some satisfying parts about it, but really it's not the best thing for you, right? Hex Wives is what, like a McDonald's meal. Yeah, you're filled up with food and maybe some of it's tasty, but again, not the best, right? But Shanghai Red is like going to a nice restaurant and having a great meal, because everything about this, the characterization, the plot, how everything is unfolds, just the look of it. Boy, talk about it's if you just think of noir as kind of a dark palette, this is definitely a dark palette. And who did the colors? Well, Joshua Hickson did. He did art and colors. Hickson does a phenomenal job of in his choice of colors, because of the I guess just the bleakness of the life that Red lives here, the path that she's chosen at the beginning of the story here, after she rebels against the captain that's kept her basically captive. So it's very dark, very limited color palette, a muted colors throughout the book. Even the flashback stuff that we get when she was younger, which is lighter in tone. Well, not just the flashbacks, but when she is not on her quest and she's interacting with mostly other women characters in the book. Granted, it's also, I'm looking at a couple pages here where it's also during the day, where we're not inside either a dark whorehouse or the belly of a ship, something like that. Those colors are also still muted, but it's a nice contrast to the rest of the book, especially the flashback stuff or the scenes with Red and her sister. So that's really neat. So yeah, it's just a very satisfying read. I highly recommend this for sure. One of the things I really like about this book is that while there is some truth to the stuff they talk about in Portland, where Red was shanghaied, because there are these underground tunnels in Portland. I've always heard of them. You could, over the many years that my family and I have visited Portland, either for Comic-Cons or other situations, concerts and whatnot. I see the signs where you can tour the underground in Portland, and I've always wanted to do it. I never had, but so there's a real life connection here to this, even though they're at the very last page of this book, Christopher Sabella has this little text blurb talking about the origin of the book and how he extrapolated historical events and mixed them all together with this story. What does he say here? History is slippery. Fiction is even more slippery. Trying to hold on to both sometimes means sometimes you have to let one slide to keep a firm grip on the other. We tried to be as true to history as we could. I researched endlessly. Josh swam in what reference images he could find of the time and places so that we could unleash something completely fictional and have it all feel effortlessly bound together. So kudos to that team for doing what I think is a fantastic job, very successful job at giving us this tale of Red and her revenge against the men who put her in that situation, who altered her life in ways that she will have to deal with for years afterwards. Although I will say that the end of the book gives us, whereas both of the other books did not give me a satisfying ending, we get a satisfying ending in this book, but it's not necessarily the one I wanted. I mean, that's the joy of reading these books, is that you go on this journey and you might find that you love where you end up on that journey, or you find that, it wasn't a very satisfying journey, or that you hated the journey. But I kind of feel that while Red gets her due by the end of this book, I guess I wanted more of a darker ending out of it, to connect to the beginning of it, thematically. But, it's still a good choice. I'm still, like I said, I feel like that this is a very cohesive, told story, a very satisfying story. So if you like the color red, you certainly get a lot out of that in this book. Reds and deep purples and blacks. There's a lot of that in here, a lot of those colors in this book. But again, it's really good, really good. So I feel like I was a little more descriptive in my complaints about about Bad Luck Chuck and Hex Wives. And while I'm effusive in my praise of Shanghai Red, I don't know that I did a good enough job at explaining how much or why I really like this book. Yeah, I just really liked it. So anyway, so yeah, those are three books I wanted to talk about. Like I said, Bad Luck Chuck, Hex Wives, and Shanghai Red. And if you would like, and I highly encourage you to do so, let me know what you think of those books. And you can do so by emailing me at longboxreview@gmail.com, or you can hit me up on Twitter at longboxreview, or visit the website longboxreview.com, and you can leave comments where this episode is posted. Thanks for listening, and I will talk to you later. Bye-bye.